Your power goes out at 7 in the evening. By 9, it's almost pleasant. Candles on the counter. The kids think it's an adventure. By midnight, everyone's in bed, and the house is still 68 degrees. Nothing is wrong. Nothing feels wrong. That's the part that matters. Because in a long outage, the hour that hurts people is not the hour the lights go out, and it isn't the hour they come back on. It sits somewhere in the middle. It arrives while the house still looks completely normal. And it's the reason a blackout everybody treated as an inconvenience ends with an ambulance in the driveway. So I'm going to run your house through the clock. Hour 12, hour 24, hour 48, hour 72, and one more that doesn't have an official name or... Let me be straight with you about that one, because I'm not going to sell you a number I can't back up. There is no study that says hour 14. Nobody measured it. It's my name for a point on the clock. Here's how I picked it. Around hour 14, 4 ordinary things line up. The food in your refrigerator has crossed the line where the government stops calling it safe. Your water is either gone or it's going, and you probably haven't noticed. Your house has finished giving back the heat it was holding when the power died. And nobody in the building has slept. Any one of those is a nuisance. All 4 at once is something else, because that's the moment somebody stands up and decides to fix it. And what happens next is what this whole video is about. Start at hour 0, because almost everything cheap and easy happens here and then never again. Right now you have 4 things you're about to lose: light, water pressure, cold air, and a phone with charge. Most people spend the first hour hunting for flashlights and calling the utility. Both are close to useless. The flashlights can wait 10 minutes. The utility doesn't know yet. Here's what actually pays. Fill something with water. Bath tube, pots, bottles, anything. I'll come back to why the timing matters, and it matters more than you'd think. Then leave the refrigerator alone. I want to name a belief here, because I've heard it from people who are otherwise careful. The belief is, I'll just open it quickly. It's only a few seconds. The Department of Agriculture puts a number on it. Your refrigerator keeps food safe for 4 hours. A full freezer holds for 48. Half full, 24. But read the rest of that sentence, because the rest of the sentence is the whole thing. Those hours only count if the door stays shut. Every time you open it, you're not spending seconds. You're spending hours off the end of the clock. 12 hours in, the first thing crosses a line. And it's the one you can't see. If your freezer was half empty when this started, it's done. That's not caution. That's the actual guidance. 24 hours, half full. And the test isn't whether it feels cold. It's whether there are still ice crystals in the food. Which brings up the second belief, and it's an expensive one. People think a freezer is a sealed box that holds for days. It's an insulated box that holds for as long as its contents stay frozen. A half-empty freezer is mostly air. Air doesn't hold cold. So at hour 12 you're throwing things away. Annoying, not dangerous. Here's what makes it worse. Around now you'll want information. When is this coming back? And you'll reach for your phone. There is no federal rule requiring backup power at cell towers. The FCC passed one after Katrina. It never took effect. It was challenged, and it was struck down. What's actually out there is batteries, and the industry's own working group describes them as sized for 2 to 8 hours. When Hurricane Ida hit Louisiana, more than half the cell sites in the state went out of service. Most of those failures weren't storm damage. They were loss of power. 2 parishes lost every single site. So at hour 12 you may be standing in a dark kitchen throwing away food with no way to find out anything. And that's still the easy part. Now, hour 14. Nothing dramatic happens at hour 14. That's the entire point of it. Look at where the house is. The food question is settled. You've thrown out what you're going to throw out. The water is quietly failing, and I'll come back to that. The temperature has started moving in a direction it won't reverse, and it's the middle of the night and nobody has slept, because a house with no furnace, no fan, and no refrigerator turns out to be a genuinely strange place to sleep in. 4 ordinary problems, none of them an emergency. But something happens to people at this point that gear cannot fix. You get tired, and you get cold, and your judgment narrows. Not dramatically. You don't feel impaired. You just start solving the problem in front of you instead of the problem you're actually in. And somewhere around here, in houses all over this country, somebody gets up and decides to do something about the cold. In Texas, in February of 2021, the state's own health department counted 246 deaths. Hypothermia killed 158 of them, and 107 of those were 60 years old or older. These were not people caught out in the storm. They were at home. I want to stop for a second, because this is the point where the video stops being interesting and starts being useful. Everything I've walked you through is a clock. And a clock is only worth something if it's in front of you when the lights are off and you're not thinking clearly. So I put it on paper. It's called the Survival Systems Preparedness Bundle. It's the printed version of exactly this: the hour-by-hour timeline, the water plan with real container sizes, the one-room setup, and the generator placement diagram we're about to get to. $27. It's a download. There's a QR code on your screen right now, and the link is in the description. That's it. Back to the house. Because we're at hour 24 and the water just stopped. Here's the belief, and it's the most reasonable sounding one in this whole video. Water can't stop. It's gravity. It comes from a tower. Some of it does. And that's exactly why it's a trap. If you're on a private well, there's no mystery. A well runs on an electric pump. Power goes, water goes, same second. It's brutal, but at least it's honest. If you're on a city line, you get the opposite experience. The tap keeps running, sometimes for hours. The system coasts on stored water and backup power, and while it coasts, everything feels fine. Then the pressure drops. And when pressure in a distribution system falls below about 20 pounds per square inch, something happens that most people have never heard of. Water stops moving in only one direction. Groundwater and soil get pulled in through cracks and joints into the pipe, toward your tap. That's what a boil water notice actually is. It isn't a precaution about the treatment plant. It's an admission that the pipes may have taken in whatever was around them. During that Texas storm, nearly 2,000 water systems went under boil water notice at the same time. More than 16 million people were told the water coming out of their taps might not be safe. 16 million. And here's the part that decides your week. The moment to fill those containers was 14 hours earlier, while the tap was still lying to you. 48 hours. Ask most people how long a house holds heat with the furnace off, and they'll say days. It's a comfortable answer, and it comes from a real place. Houses feel solid. The honest answer is that nobody can tell you your number, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. There's no rule of degrees per hour, because a house doesn't cool in a straight line. It cools fast at first, then slower, which is exactly the shape that fools you. What does exist is modeling. In one simulation of a cold snap in northern Minnesota, a house built before 1950 dropped below 40 degrees inside in about 8 hours. A house built to 2009 code took 45. A super insulated one took more than 6 days. Same weather, same outage. The difference was insulation and nothing else. So the useful question isn't how long do I have, it's which of those houses am I sitting in? And you can find that out this week, in daylight, for free. Now the second belief, this one is the dangerous one. People assume they would feel it. That cold which is actually hurting you announces itself. Indoor cooling doesn't work like weather. There's no wind, you're not wet. And it happens slowly enough that your body keeps recalibrating what normal is. It goes unpleasant, then miserable, then oddly tolerable. And that third stage isn't you adapting. That's the warning system giving up. It happens most often while people are asleep. and it happens hardest to people over 60, which is most of the people who died in Texas. So somebody gets up to fix the cold, and this is where the video has been going since the first sentence. When people improvise heat, they reach for the same short list: a generator, a grill, a camp stove, a car in the garage, a gas oven with the door open. Every single one of those makes carbon monoxide. And I need to give you one number so the scale is clear. The National Institute of Standards and Technology put it this way: a single portable generator can emit several hundred times more carbon monoxide than a modern car's exhaust. Several hundred times, mint. Now here's the belief I most want to kill, and it's nearly universal. People believe that a garage with the door open is outside. It isn't, and this is not my opinion. The Consumer Product Safety Commission's guidance is explicit. Never run a generator in a home, a garage, a crawl space, or a shed, and I'm quoting, even when using fans or opening doors and windows for ventilation. Deadly levels build up quickly in those spaces, and they linger for hours even after the generator has been shut off. Read that last part again after you turn it off. Carbon monoxide has no smell, no color, and no taste. You cannot detect it. There is no version of you that is careful enough. And the early symptoms are headache, dizziness, nausea, and fatigue, which at hour 60 of a blackout in a cold house after 2 bad nights is indistinguishable from how you already feel. That's the trap, not carelessness. Overlap. In Texas, 19 people died this way. Generators, grills, heaters, and cars running in enclosed spaces. Nationally, the Consumer Product Safety Commission counts about 85 deaths a year from generator carbon monoxide alone, and calls that a minimum. The CDC puts accidental carbon monoxide deaths overall at roughly 430 a year, with the highest rate among people over 65. The fix costs less than a tank of gas. A battery-powered carbon monoxide alarm in the room where you sleep. Tested before winter, not wired into a house that has no power. That's the whole defense. And it's the cheapest thing in this video. 72 hours. By now, the question isn't supplies. It's whether you stay. And people are bad at this decision for an honest reason. Leaving feels like defeat. The house is yours, your things are in it, and going to a shelter or a relative's place feels like admitting you couldn't handle it. The Texas report has a detail in it I haven't been able to stop thinking about. Among the risk factors the state listed for the people who died was refusing to evacuate to heated shelters and warming centers. They weren't unreachable. Help existed. They said no. Which brings me to the last belief: someone will come, or the power will be back before this gets serious. Most power plants cannot start themselves. They need electricity from the grid to get going. So if a large area goes fully dark, it isn't a repair. The system has to be rebuilt outward from a handful of plants that can start from nothing. In August of 2003, 50 million people across 8 states and Ontario lost power. Parts of the United States took 4 days. Parts of Ontario had rolling blackouts for over a week. And the people who reviewed it afterward considered that a relatively good outcome. 4 days is the good outcome. And for some households, 4 days is not survivable at home. More than 4.5 million Medicare beneficiaries in this country depend on electricity for medical equipment or essential care. Home oxygen, dialysis, ventilators. In Texas, 25 people died from existing illnesses made worse by the storm. Dialysis interrupted, oxygen stopped, medication and devices frozen. If that's your house, or your mother's house, the stay or go decision doesn't happen at hour 72. It happens now, on paper, with a phone number on it. So go back to that first night, 7 in the evening. Candles on the counter, 68 degrees. Everybody a little bit charmed by it. Nothing about that room tells you anything. The house at hour 2 and the house at hour 14 look identical, and that isn't a failure of your attention. It's the actual nature of the thing. which is why none of this gets decided in the dark. It gets decided on an ordinary afternoon, with the lights on, when you fill the containers, when you find out which of those houses you live in, when you put a battery alarm in the room where you sleep. The blackout was never the emergency, it's just the 14 hours you didn't plan for.